One of the biggest struggles we have with our health is managing our time. We all feel stressed. We all feel like there's not enough hours in the day to do what we need to do. And so oftentimes we turn to productivity hacks. How do I get more done in 20 minutes and take breaks every 5 minutes? And don't get me wrong, some of those hacks are great, but they are kind of like modern medicine. They just treat the symptoms and they don't get to the root cause of the problem. You see, how we spend our time is what makes up our life. And so we have to get beyond just how do we get more done or get through more emails. We have to think about how do we actually want to spend our time in a way that works for not just maybe our jobs, but for our families and for our health and for ourselves. So first, let's take a step back. Why do we feel so busy right now? Well, there's actually 4 main reasons that we've seen of why so many busy executives feel like they don't have enough time. Number 1, busyness makes us feel important. Even if we don't think that's true, we kind of like the fact when it's like, oh, I'll get back to you, in a couple days, or, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone right now, or, oh, I've got to get back to these emails. We even do it with our teams. We don't allow our teams to think because we think if they're not doing enough, then why are we paying them? What are they doing for us? And so this busyness has kind of become a sense of prestige or honor. Number 2, we simply fill up as much time as we're willing to give to something. So if we decide we're willing to work till 7, 8, 10 o'clock at night, we will actually fill that time till 7 or 8 or 10 o'clock at night. This is some great work from Cal Newport that he's talked about in his book, Deep Work, and the fact we will fill any arbitrary amount of time that we put out there. Number 3 is a law that affects me and the rest of us all the time, maybe without us realizing it, is Hofstadter's law. So this basically means everything we try to do or think we're gonna get done, it always takes longer than we think. And that's why we go into our day with maybe 10 or 12 things on our to-do list or a full calendar, and yet 5 or 6 o'clock hits and we're always behind. And that's because everything takes longer than we expect it to. And finally, we all feel the need to complete things. So if you want to get through your email, maybe you go even beyond what you have to try to really get that inbox down to 0. But really, that's not that important. And yet we still feel the need to complete those things or feel like it's hanging over our head. And so for all these reasons, we simply feel like we're out of time. So we're going to talk about some of the ways in which we can better manage our time and think about what we can do to get out that without just some simple hacks. Now, first thing is, I love this new book that came out. It's called The Art of Subtraction. Too often we think about throwing new things at a problem, or we think about adding things to our schedule, when instead we need to simplify. There's so many things that talk about how perfection is really not when you can't add anything left, but when you can't take anything else away from it. And I think that's something that oftentimes we have as kids, but not as adults. There's an amazing experiment with Legos where they show how do you make this bridge become stable again? And the average child will take one of the Legos away, but the average adult will add another Lego to the stand to make it balance. It's just emblematic of how we as adults think about things, of always adding things instead of taking it away. And so as we think about that, I think it's so appropriate to connect subtraction with how we can think about time management. Oliver Burkeman from 4,000 Weeks talks about, we don't really control time. We think we do, but we don't. It's just this amorphous, commodity or currency that is just a part of being that we've tried to control since the invention of the clock and the Industrial Revolution, but really it's not something that we can control. And so we can't just accept that and just say, well, let's throw our hands in the air and there's nothing we can do about it, because we do live in a modern world. We do have deadlines, we do have bosses, but I think that there's ways in which we can maintain that productivity while still keeping our sanity and, more importantly, our health. So here are 10 ways to remain productive in our modern, fast-paced society without losing our health or our sanity. Now, the first 3 we're going to talk about is boundaries. So first, set boundaries for when you're willing to do something. That means if it's 5 o'clock at night and you're going to go home from work and be with your family, you've set that deadline. Because if you're willing to work till 6 or 7, you're going to work till 6 or 7. But if you know ahead of time you have 5 o'clock, I bet that you can get almost as much done up until that point in time than you would if you didn't already do that. And that boundary will create a sense of relief that you can leave one task and move on to another. And number 2, even within that bigger boundary, whether you're protecting your weekends or you're protecting your evenings, set time limits for when you're going to do one thing. Now, there's, a lot of people say, I'm only going to do email for 1 hour, right? And then I'm going to be done with that. There's a founder entrepreneur that I work with, and he had a great example. He has 3 sales managers, and he said, you have 15 minutes to come up with a new sales deck to give to our customers. And they looked at him like thinking that was crazy. How are they going to do that? But they all went through the exercise, and although the decks were quote unquote ugly, they got 80-90% of the essence of what they needed in that sales pitch in just 15 minutes. And so when we protect our time and we set those limits, it's amazing what we can get done. And when you 80-20 it, that's actually most of the time of all we actually have to do. And number 3, protect your time. We have to be able to get into deep work and not just be doing tasks. Maybe that starts with just 1 hour on Wednesday. Maybe you can eventually grow that till Wednesday has no meetings, no calls, and you can just think and use that time for yourself. But whatever you're doing, protect your time. Next 3, we're going to talk about prioritization. Everything needs to have a goal and an ROI for where you're spending your time when it comes to work. And so oftentimes we think about all the things we have to do and we don't spend enough time thinking what we don't have to do, right? And so 1, it's okay to not do the things that don't have to be done. It's such a simple quote, but I think it's so appropriate that most of us don't question enough if we actually have to be doing something. Are we actually going to feel better if we have a clean inbox? Does that task really need to get done today? Because again, there's never going to be a time when our list is clean, and yet we decide we always have to do it and we put stress on ourselves to get it done today, and then that creates all kinds of mental health issues. Number 2, think about your non-goals. Again, it's not that challenging to say, here's our top 3 things and here's the things we're definitely not working on. But what about priorities number 4, 5, and 6? Once you agree that you're not working on that right now, it clears up so much mind share and so much stress that you're not doing that right now. And that ties to the next goal, which is decide where you're going to fail. As I think about my life, I've got my parenting hat on, I've got my partner hat on, I've got my professional hat on. There's no way I'm going to be excellent at all of those things. But then you have to have an agreement. What's going to fall off the list? So right now, our house is a little bit in disarray. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and that playroom just blows up and the toys are everywhere in the house. And typically that would really bother me, but I've made an agreement that how important it is to get some stuff done at work and how important it is to have quality time with the family is just going to trump the fact that the house is not going to be clean all the time right now. So after we've gone through, set our boundaries, prioritize what we're going to do, let's also celebrate what you have done, right? So I love this little hack of creating a done list. Let's look at everything you did get accomplished that day, not just what you didn't. It's a really good way to look back and say, wow, I actually had a big day that I got a lot done without thinking about the gap of everything you didn't get done that day. The next piece is pick your distractions. None of us are perfect. We're all going to have our own distractions. Whether I'm going to the ESPN app or some of us are going to social media, we're all going to get distracted throughout the day. But one of the things I found to be really interesting there is if you're going to have distractions, think about which of them gives you joy, not which of them you're just doing for the sake of getting a dopamine hit or feeling worse about yourself. So if it does bring you joy, then that can be a small list of things you're willing to do, whether that's a walk, whether that's talking to a partner, whether that's, going to a certain app. Don't just mindlessly find these distractions, find the things that actually make your life better. And then that ties into a very tactical suggestion, which is your phone. Make your phone a tool, not a toy. You've probably seen hacks like put it on grayscale instead of color, make it less alluring, make it less of something that has to be tied at your hip 24/7. And finally, this is our bonus last hack of the day, do nothing. It is so important as humans for us to have the freedom to let our brains just be with itself, our own thoughts and our own time, because that's when we can actually do some deep thinking and understand and be present in the moment and live our life now as opposed to in the past or in the future. Look, we can't control time and we can do everything we can to become more productive. But at the end of the day, what we can control is how we spend that time and prioritize it in a way that helps us live our best life, spending time with those we love and feeling like we can have the life we want to live.